Okay, so welcome to Module 2. In this lesson, we're going to be talking about paragraph styles and character styles and a few other tips and tricks along the way. So right now, I just have Adobe Indesign open to the template that you guys can download and use. And we're gonna hop right in. So first things first, before we get started, we're gonna set up InDesign to be user-friendly for us. So right now, I don't have all the tools and bells and whistles that I need to do my job. So what I want you guys to do and what I need to do is go to Window, Workspace, and right now it's set for Essentials, but I want it to have Essentials Classic. So before I click that, let's just look and see, like, we don't have any tools up here. We only have these three tools to the side, but we do have all these tools off to our left. So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to change the workspace to Essentials Classic. Click that, give it a second to load, and here we have it. So we have all these different tools. This is more what you guys are familiar with. If we click on this text down here, we can see what basically is what we're used to seeing in Microsoft Word, where we have the font, the style of font, all caps, the font size, the spacing, all of this stuff. This is where we set up our book to be left justified. So many different options up here. And then we have the pages. We have our parent pages right here, which we'll talk about soon in an upcoming lesson. We have the entire pages for the document right here. And then some of these tools you don't need to know. So in this course, I'm only going to be teaching you guys what you need to know to format your book, because Adobe InDesign does a lot of things, and some of these things you don't need to know to format your book. And if you want to learn more later on, that's great, but I don't want to overwhelm you guys with information that you don't necessarily need. But the panels we're talking about today are over here. So if you hover your mouse over something, you can see it labels it, where we have this one right here. It's that little paragraph symbol that we're used to seeing in Microsoft Word. And that is our paragraph styles. And then we see this one right above it, character styles. And do know you can change the order of things. You see I'm just dragging and dropping, and I can just play around with things and change them for how they will, but I kind of like the order they're in right now. So I'm just going to click paragraph styles and we're going to start talking about it. For the sake of keeping your vision clear, I'm going to minimize the pages panel, which is this panel right here, and we're just going to keep that out of our way for now. And we got our paragraph styles. Do know you can drag and drop it like that, so you can move it all throughout your document if you so please. But I'm used to my old familiar ways, and I like it off to the right side here. So paragraph styles are going to be your best friend. They are the reason why formatting in Adobe InDesign is so effective. Here, if I highlight easy, because you create paragraph styles and you assign text to different paragraph styles. So we can see my chapter header here. If I highlight it, it says that the paragraph style it is assigned to right now is chapter header. And then if I highlight this one, we can see that the paragraph style is drop cap. And you can see this right here is a lovely drop cap. It just makes the start of a book chapter much fancier. And then if I go down here, and please note, you don't even have to highlight. You can also just click within that paragraph, and you can see off to the right here that it changes depending on which one I'm in. So if I click on this one, you can see that it is body text, and it has that little plus sign. Sometimes that just means that I've modified it after assigning the body text, but if you want to get rid of that plus sign, you can just do the right click and this little options menu will pop up, and you hit apply body text clear overrides, and you can see that it just changed the spacing. So that's that, and it just kind of spaced out the words just a little bit. Now, these paragraph styles are already pre-assigned in the template that I gave you guys, and you guys can create your own paragraph styles as well, but I'm going to walk you through them right now. So first things first is we're going to talk about the body text, which is the main paragraph style for your book. So I'm going to right click and then click edit body text, and that will bring up all the different options. So here we have the body text. We can rename it if we want up here. We have based on or new style. You guys don't necessarily need to know about that right now. What your best friend will be is this right here. So we're in the basic character formats tab, and you can change the font, you can change the style of font, but again, we're book Antiqua, regular, size 11, and then leading, that is how much space is in between lines. So I'm going to move this to the side because what we can do is we can click off this little preview box, and I'm going to show you guys if we increase the leading, it goes ahead and increases the space in between lines. My basic default is 18 point because I feel like that looks nicest, and that is also kind of the start of industry standard. But again, if you want to play with that at any point, you can do that. So that's that. You don't need to mess with this. Indent is the next thing you're going to want to mess with. So you can see that it is set for left justify, but you can also see we can play around with those things, but we're going to bring it back to left justify. And our first line indent, also known as like tab, if you're familiar with Microsoft Word, that's this right here. I like to set mine at 0.25, but you can mess around with that if you will. But I find any more and any less tends to look a little odd, and 0.25 is personally my favorite. So some people like to add a little chunk of space in between paragraphs, and if you want to do that, you can do that right here. So space between paragraphs using the same style. You can change it to say 0.3, and you can see we create that little space right there. Now the only issue with that is that you can see that this is this start of the chapter is not the same style as this body text right here, because this is the drop cap style and this is the body text style. So this won't necessarily work in that instance. What you would want to do in that instance is mess with this, which is the space before each paragraph. So I'd set this for 0.3, and then we can preview, and it sets 0.3 points, and then it sets 0.3 inches as the space in between each paragraph. So that personally looks like a little bit much. So I'm going to mess around with that, and you can kind of just play around until you feel like you have the spacing that you like. But for me, especially for novels, I don't like having that spacing. Sometimes I like that spacing when I format nonfiction books. But again, I just wanted to show you guys all these different options, and you are free to click around and really play with things as well to really just see bucks. But again, I just want to show you guys all these different options, and you are free to click around and really play with things as well to really just see what your book can look like. And then the next thing I do is I go to the hyphenation tab, and I have it set not to hyphenate. I really don't like when there's hyphenations throughout a book. So I always make sure my hyphenation is unclicked. But if you guys want hyphenation, there's a ton of different settings for the hyphenation right here that you can play around with. But again, I don't like hyphenations, so I remove it. But that is up to you guys whether or not you want to proceed. So that is basically it for the body text. So once you're done, you hit the OK button so it saves everything. And then the next one I want to talk about is the one for front matter. So that one's all the way down here, but just for organization's sake, I'm going to move it to the top. So let's say we wanted to go ahead and create a new paragraph style. So we're going to do that right now. And I'm going to right click and hit duplicate style. So I have body text copy. What we're going to do right now is we're going to make front matter. And this is just going to be the style that we apply to our copyright page. And we're going to base it on body style. So what happens here is that if we ever change something in the body text, it will also change it in the front matter text according to whatever was similar. So right now, the fonts for front matter and the fonts for the body text are the same. But if I later on change the font for the body text, later on, if I change the font for body text, it will also automatically change it for the front matter, which is always very nice. So we duplicated the body text. So what is going to be different about the body text from the front matter text? And that's basically is just the indents, spacing, and alignment. So for my front matter, I like the alignment to be center aligned, and then to have no sort of indent. So that's just what I'm going to do right there. And I just hit the enter button, which basically allowed me to hit the OK button and saved it. So we see our front matter text right there. So if I were to hit this copyright page and highlight it and then hit front matter, you can see it center aligned it and it has no indent. And you can check up here that that's exactly what's happening. So let's pretend this right here is a start of a new scene. When I start a new scene, much like when I start a new chapter, you don't want any sort of indent. In order to make that cohesive, I have this little no indent paragraph style, and we're just going to hit the edit button so we can see what's going on. You can see right here it is based on the body text, so again, if I change the body text, it will automatically also change the no indent text. And all that's different about this is that, again, it has no first line indent. So that is the only thing that's different. So as I'm clicking this and I hit no indent, you can see it all looks the same. It just got rid of that indent, but it's still very nice, clean, and cohesive. Next, we'll talk about the drop cap. So I'm just gonna assign this back to the regular body text. And you saw when I did that, it not only got rid of that drop cap, but it also pushed my text all the way to the top of this page. And that is because there are a few things that I did to create my drop cap. So I'm gonna go ahead and hit edit drop cap just so we can see what's going on. So this style is based on the no indent style. You can also base it on the body text style. Either way will work. And we can see we have no indent, but we do have going on is that we have 2 inches of space happening before the start of this paragraph. So that is what happens when I assign this. You can see it's automatically creating this 2 inches of space from the chapter header to the actual start of the chapter, which just makes your life easier. Normally in Microsoft Word, what you would do is that you would start here and then you'd hit enter, 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 and then you'd kind of have to make a mental note to yourself how many times you hit enter. We don't have to do that here. We just click and we hit drop cap and it's already assigned. And if you want to do more space, you can do that. So again, I'm just going to open it and show you guys that we can set it for 3 inches and it will drop it even more. Or we can set it for 1.5 and it'll bring it up. But again, I kind of like how it looks at 2 inches right now. So that's how that happened right there. And now let's talk about how we got the drop cap to happen. So that is right under this tab right here for drop caps and nestled styles. So right now, what I have it set for is 2 lines in 1 character, but you can also set it for 3 lines. So we have 1, 2, 3 lines that this big letter takes up, and then 1 character. You can also set it for 2 characters, but the only time I set it for 2 characters if it's like something like this, where you need it set for 2 characters. But what I usually do in that case, and I'm going to go in and show you guys what I normally do. So we're going to go back to the drop caps, set it for 1 character. So this is kind of, as you're formatting your book, you'll encounter this, where your drop cap is literally just a quotation mark. Rather than changing it for the paragraph style, you're actually going to go up here, and this is your character setting. So we can see right here, our drop cap is set for 3 lines in 1 character. So you just change it for this 1 singular chapter that it's going to have 2 characters. And then you can see that it changed here as well, that it's drop cap plus, which just means that you change the settings that are different from the setting that you have it manually set at. Now going back to editing that drop cap, we can see here that that drop cap was created based on the character style 1. I don't use character styles a whole lot. I only use them when I am creating the drop caps, and you can see that I don't put a lot of thought into it. But if you wanted to create a different character style, you can go ahead and click this little down arrow and hit create new character style, and that'll open up this new window. And you can even label it drop cap if you want, and then you can start playing around with different fonts. And that's where things get a little more fun, and you can make it font size 11. This is when you have to start just playing around with things, and you can see that it changed right here. But you do have to be careful, because as you can see, some fonts are missing certain characters, like this font right here actually doesn't have the option to do quotation marks. So just be mindful of that when you're choosing your different fonts. But another way to access the character styles is this tab right here. So you can see the character style 1 that we started off with, and then the character style that we just created now, which is the drop cap one. So I'm just going to go back in and change our drop cap back to the original one, which is character style 1, just so we can have have those quotation marks. So the last thing we're going to be talking about right now is our chapter headers. So our chapter headers are fun, and we're going to hit the edit chapter header paragraph style. And we're going to go into basic character format. So this is where I like to get the most fancy. I like to make my chapter header the same font as the font of my book. So the way you do that is just go into the basic character formats, and then you just put in whatever font was used for the title of your book. For me, I know this was the font that was used for Meet Me at the Summit, so there we have it right here. And then we can play around with the size and the leading. So the only thing with the chapter headers, is the only bummer, is that you can't do that fancy space before trick like we did for the drop cap style. I can put in the space before right now, and I add in 1 inch, and you can see that it created 1 inch between this and this. But if I delete that little paragraph symbol, we lose that 1 inch of space. So unfortunately, what I do for the chapter headers is that I am just mindful of how many paragraph symbols I did have to put in there. Sometimes what I do is I just hit that enter tab once, like we have right here, and then I go into the settings and I mess around the spacing that way. But in this instance, I feel like it actually looks best to have no spacing, because I like how the words line up with the top of this like little mountain illustration that I added in. So that's just a quick note. And then what you can do if you're the type of person where we have this as chapter 1, and then after that you have a subheader like the character's name, what you can do is that you can duplicate your chapter header style, and we can start messing around with things. So for subheaders, typically you want it to be much smaller. What I'm actually going to do is I'm going to make sure this is assigned to our subheader, and also rename this to subheader. That way we can preview it as we go. So I'm going to make that smaller. And actually, I personally am like, ooh, I don't want it to be the same exact font. So we're going to change it back to Book Antiqua. And we're going to do case style as all caps. And we're going to make it smaller. And then maybe we'll try italics and be like, oh, that looks nice. And then we can start messing with things like leading. Like I want it to be a little bit closer to chapter 1. And I think that looks good. So if once you are satisfied, you can hit OK. and now we have this subheader style. And that's basically all you need to know about the paragraph styles. So you can endlessly create how many paragraph styles you want to. I personally, what I like to do as I work is I like to put the paragraph styles in order that I use them. So often I'll have our chapter header, then we have the subheader, the drop cap, and the body text, because that's the order in which I use them. But I will show you more tips and tricks on how to apply and use these as we actually go through and format the book. But this lesson was just about learning the basics so you understand what I'm doing when we get to the stage of actually formatting our book. So the next lesson, we are going to be covering parent pages, which are these right up here. So I will see you all in the next lesson. Place, and I'm just gonna find it in my designs. So you can see I'm just in all of my excessive amount of design. All right, welcome to the next lesson. In this lesson, we are talking about parent pages, which I'm sure if you aren't familiar with InDesign, you have no clue what I'm talking about. But parent pages are these pages right up here. These are basically your templates for the book. Now you can tell what parent pages are assigned to your book itself, because this right here, all this from down below, these are the actual pages of your book, and then up above, these are the parent pages. So I'm going to go ahead and we are going to click into these parent pages that I've already gone in and created. So I'm going to click on this one that is labeled chapter right. So this is our parent page. This is how we edit things that will be for our chapter headers. And you can see I created one for the right and one for the left. That is the only thing that's different. We have the illustration on the right. We have the illustration on the left. I know, super complicated. So basically, if you want a chapter header that looks like this, we're again back down here in the actual book itself. If you want these beautiful chapter headers that have the illustration that goes all across the book, you need to create that in the parent pages up here. So I'm going to delete this one and I'm going to show you how easy it is to do that. So all you have to do is you have to have an illustration first of all. So I already had this illustration made, but I'm going to go in, I'm going to go to File, Place, and I'm just going to find it in my designs. So you can see I'm just in all of my excessive amount of designs. I have my chapter header that I designed, and I'm just going to click that and hit open. And then you can see that it's attached to my mouse here. So now we just kind of make the bounding box of where we want to put it. So I'm going to start all the way up here. So do note these red lines are your bleed lines. So we can visually see that all this white is the pages of the books, but we need our illustration to go all the way to the bleed lines right here, because when we export this, we're going to export it with bleed. And again, I'll tell you more about bleed when we get there, but just know that these red lines are your bleed lines. So I'm going to start way off to the bleed lines and drag and drop this box until I'm at the other bleed lines. So now you can see it actually goes beyond this bleed line. So I'm going to take my mouse and I'm just going to scooch it right to the edge of the bleed line, and that just makes it more visually clean for me. And then if I double click, you see that the line actually changes from orange. So the blue line is the bounding box that we created, and the orange, when I double click, is how big the illustration itself is. So I'm on the orange and I'm just going to nudge it to center it into the bounding box a little bit more. And then that's it. So that is how you add those illustrations to the background of your chapter headers. You can design these illustrations in many different ways. I designed this one personally in Procreate on my iPad because I designed my illustration for Meet Me at the Summit in Procreate on my iPad. So what I basically did is I took the illustration and then I opened it up in Photoshop, made it black and white, and then created this nice little like gradient fade so that when we get to the text, which is right here. We don't have any of the illustration on the text that you want to be easy to read for the reader. So I create all of mine in Adobe Photoshop. So just to give you guys another example, I'm here in Adobe Photoshop, and this is how I normally create my chapter headers. So a lot of the time I will go into Photoshop and I will add in these this filler text to kind of just visualize. I have the chapter header, the sub-chapter header, and then just some Lipsum Lorem, which is filler text, to help me visualize what it will look like. And then I have this right here, which is the illustration, and it's actually super simple to create this. So I'm gonna create a new Photoshop layer, and again, this isn't a tutorial on how to use Photoshop. I just wanted to show you guys a quick, easy way, if you are familiar with Photoshop, how you can do this. So I have this new blank layer. I'm going to go over here, and these are all my brushes. I have a lot of different Photoshop brushes, but I would basically just go in and choose different brushes and mess around with it until I like the look of my chapter header. So if this was a steampunk book, and I could basically paint my own little chapter header, I do want to make sure this is black, so I'm just changing the color of that. So I'm going to add a gear there. Changing the size. We're gonna add another gear here, and basically I'm just doing this really quick to show you guys, but I think you are starting to get the deal that you can kind of just go in and create your own custom little chapter headers so easily in Adobe Photoshop. And honestly, if you end up enjoying Adobe InDesign, you can sign up for Adobe Photoshop and, you know, take advantage of all the different things that Adobe lets you do. Now, this is ugly, but you get the idea. So you create something like that, and then you'd hide your text layers, and then just do File, Export, and then I just do a quick export as a PNG. And then you can go into InDesign, go to your parent page, and plop that in right here. So we can see we have the parent page for the right chapter, the parent page for the left chapter. And as you can also see, we don't have page numbers and we don't have headers. But where we do want page numbers is this next parent page that I created. I call it the master chapter page header, because this is the one where we do have the book title, the author name, and the page numbers. Now, right now, the page numbers show up as B, and that's just because this is the parent page. That's just kind of like a placeholder for where the numbers will be later on. And you can change the font by just highlighting it and then going up here and changing the font. Same with over here, and obviously you'd want to change it to the title of your book. A lot of the times what I will do is I will put in the book title, and then sometimes if I'm feeling really fancy, I change it to the font that is the book title of my book, like so. And I'm actually going to make this just a tad bigger. And then I change my author name to my name right there. And that is basically, this is already good to go. So these purple and pink boxes, this is where the actual book text is going to go. And then you can see right here we have the headers, the footers, and then I put in these little blue guides, and these are just so you can make sure that you're centered. And I like to make sure that the text is within these little guides right here. So that is how you kind of set up your parent pages. And I will show you later on in a future lesson on how to apply them to your actual book, which is right here. But again, that'll be later when we actually get to the formatting. But that is the basics of what you need to know about parent pages. And if you wanted to, so like I said, if we are doing a nonfiction book and we want, instead of the book title, we want the chapters, we could go ahead and change this to like chapter 1 and then whatever the chapter title is. We could do that, and then what you basically want to do is that you'd want to right click and then hit duplicate spread, and we have the spread duplicated right here. We have it open, and we are going to change this to chapter 2, and then you'd also change whatever the chapter title is. And then just for organization's sake, I do right click and then parent options for eParent, and that just lets me rename it. I don't rename the prefix. That's just an organization thing. Instead of letters, you can also do numbers. I just keep it at letters. But then you'd say change this to chapter 2. So you have it quick and easy to access. And again, you can move these around to whatever order you want them to be in. And then I always also keep a parent page that is completely blank, has no chapters, has no chapter header art, and has no headers or footers. I just like to always have a blank parent page to apply. And actually, if you look over here, that is what all of these pages are applied to. So you can see that prefix D, and then you can see the prefix D right here. That's how you know what pages are assigned to what. And then you can see this one right here is labeled as A, and we have A right here. So if we click on that, we see this art. So then if we click on this page, we see that art. So that is the basics of parent pages. And in the next lesson, we're going to be talking about using this template and setting your trim sizes and changing your margins. The next module, which is actually formatting your book. So there's only a few more things that we need to discuss about InDesign for you to understand the formatting process. So that is this template. So you're going to have this template and you're going to need to change a few things to make it work for you before you can get started. So that first one is I want to tell you how to add additional pages. And basically, you can add additional pages at any time throughout any point in the book, right over here in the Pages panel. So let's say you want to add in additional front matter. So let's say you want to add another 2 pages before the chapter starts. Like we have the title page, the copyright page, the additional title page with more info. But you want like a full map spread. Like you want a map that's going to take up both these pages. You can easily add in those pages by clicking the page that you want to add the page after to. So we have this page, which is the number 3 in Roman numerals. And then down here, when you hover, again, you can see exactly what it says. We have this little create new page button, and I'm going to click that once, twice, and you can see we have this lovely blank spread now, and then we still have this blank page, and it didn't disturb anything, which is awesome. And if you also want to go ahead and start formatting the book itself, and you'll see me do this when we're actually formatting the book, and you want to add another page after this one, you again just hit that plus button and we have our additional page there. And you could even get real fancy right now and assign the parent page to this so it has the header and footer. And to do that, you right click and you hit apply to parent pages and you click which one you want, and in this case we need the chapter page one, and right there. And there you have it. So then you'd be able to go over here and continue your book onto this page, but that's getting into the little complications. We'll talk about that when we get there. So you're also going to need to replace content, and you can replace content very easily, and that is just by clicking on anything and hitting delete. And then if you have your own title, chapter title page, you can do file, place, and then find it, and then just like I showed you earlier, dragging and dropping it into place. Or if you don't have a graphic of your title page, you can just hit this little text icon, drag and drop a bounding box, and then type in your book title. Oops, meet me at the summit. I can't talk and type at the same time. And then we could apply paragraph styles here if we wanted to, so we can do the front matter one. But in this case, for a chapter title, you're probably going to want it to be significantly bigger. But you can start off with your paragraph style and just play around with things. And then we could put your author name. And again, do the front matter one. And yeah, so you can do it either by text or like I like to do, I have PNGs that I create in Photoshop of the title page. And then I bring it into here. You're going to want to paste in your copyright page. Do, again, a proper title page with all your info. Sometimes you can also put your publishing house logo over here if you so please. You can add in your map. We'll talk about how to add in your map. And then over here, when it comes to adding in your chapter, you are just going to outright delete what I have in the template. I just show that there to kind of give you a visual of what things should look like. And then you're going to go to File, Place, and you're going to grab that document that we had prepped earlier. So this is the document we prepped earlier. It's the one labeled Test, and we are going to hit Open, and then it's going to take a bit. It's going to load. As you can see, my computer has to think a bit, and it may take a while, it may not, but just show patience. So we can see my entire manuscript is right here, and we are going to put it inside this little pink and purple bounding box, like so. And then what you would do is that you'd hit this little red plus button, means that there is more to this than what's within this bounding box. So I'm going to click that red plus button, and now you can see it's on my mouse again. So I'm going to scroll down, and I have this chapter page started. And the nice part about this, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the shift button, and you can see that my mouse just changed. So this is without the shift button. This is with the shift button. So what this will do is that when I click on this spot, it will auto-fill not only this page, but every single page until we reach the end of the document. And because the last page has the parent page B applied, you see the B right here, which is this one right here, it will apply them to all the pages moving forward until we change that. I'm gonna hit shift, put this bounding box, and what just happened is that I just did a single click, like shift click, and it pasted in my entire book. You can see me scrolling right here. This is my entire book. As it stands, my book is at 282 pages. So say you have a very long book and you're at 282 pages. So that is basically the start of formatting your book, and this is not the end of it. We're going to go into this with more detail, but I just wanted to set that up for you. What I'm going to do right now is I'm actually going to delete everything we just pasted in. So I'm going to start with page 2 and then go all the way to the bottom and hit shift to highlight all those pages, and then hit this delete selected page button, and that deletes all those pages just so they're not in our way. And now we're kind of back to the beginning with just these beginner opening pages. So the next thing that I want to show you guys is to show you guys how to change your paper size. So right now, this is set for 5.5 by 8.5, and that's just purely because that's what I format my books at. So that's my default for everything. Access what your paper size is. It's this page tool right over here. It's labeled as page tool. It may be in a slightly different spot for you, but just know this is the little icon you're looking for. But you select this page tool and then you can click paper, and then it says up here what your paper size is. So if I need to change the paper size of a book, I actually start off in the parent pages. So I go in and I make sure they're both selected, and you can do that by hitting shift. And then I'm going to go up here and change this to 6, and I'm going to go here, change that to 9, hit enter, and you just saw the paper size change. So just know that whenever you do this, you also need to make sure that you adjust your illustration, because now we can see that the illustration doesn't go to the edge. So I'm going to go to this corner. I'm going to hit Control and Shift at the same time and just pull it outwards, and that is how we resize our illustration. So I always start with using the page tool in the parent pages documents and changing everything there. And again, we're going to hit Shift and Control at the same time when we drag to adjust that. So I just like to fix all my parent pages, because I know if my parent pages are correct, the rest of my document is correct as well. So when you do this, you also need to make sure that you change the headers and footers. So I'm just adjusting these text boxes to make sure that they are centered. And you can see that with the paper size change, now our page numbers are within the little bounding boxes of our paragraph text. So I held shift to click on both of them, and I'm dragging them both down. And now I'm going to click one, make sure we get all the way to the edge of that bounding box, and all the way to the edge of that bounding box. So now these are in the correct spot where we need them again. If you want, you can also change your little blue guidelines, and you can do that easily but by just clicking on them and adjusting. Frankly, I always forget to do this, but it's there. I'm actually going to delete this parent page because we don't need it. And then also just double check and make sure you also update your blank parent page as well. So doing that. So now I just like to go in and double check that the remaining pages we have in our document are all updated to the new page size. So I'm just going in and I'm clicking them individually and checking up here to make sure that the page size is correct and they all look correct. And honestly, if you ever find that they aren't correct, just go to your pages panel over here, click your last one, hold shift, click your first one, it highlights all of them, and then go up here and you can change it here. But again, since they are all the same size, you can see that the size is correct. So that is how you change your page size. Next, we're going to talk about changing your margin size. And then, of course, at the end of the day, you also want to go in and adjust all the front matter that you already have in there, because you can see that the text boxes don't go quite as big as they're supposed to. Even this right here isn't as big as it's supposed to. I'm just going to adjust that. And then here, you're going to want to adjust as well. So that's just something you have to make sure you do when you change your page size. Next, we're going to adjust the margins, which is under the layout tab, and then we see margins and columns here. This is what I set for the margins. So we see this right here, the top margins is this, inside margins is this, bottom down there, outside right here. And then for the left page, this is still considered the inside. So the inside margins are these two margins. The outside margins is this margin and this margin. So you probably won't need to touch columns. Columns is more like a newspaper thing. But this is where you go if you need to adjust your margins at any time. This should be appropriate for most books that you publish. If you publish a book with more than 400 pages, you may have to adjust the margins of the inside of the book, which are these margins right here. It's this setting right here. KDP requires about 0.7 inches for their inside margins on books that are over 400 pages. That's because the spine is so thick. That's because the spine is so thick that it actually needs more margin room to be able to easily read the text. So I have that in here automatically, but sometimes KDP still gets picky and you're going to need to update this 0.7 to 0.8. And when that happens, I like to take this 0.5 and change it to 0.4. And you can see when we did that, it shifted things. So I'm just going to hit OK on that. And you can see now we just have to shift our text like so. So it is easiest to adjust your margins at the beginning before you start all your formatting. So that is what we did. And now we are good to go. The last thing that I want to explain before we get started is the bleed. So I already mentioned bleed a little bit in the last lesson, but this gray section right here, this is your bleed section. So to adjust your bleed section, you just go to File and then you go to Document Setup. And this is where you can adjust your bleed. It's also where you can adjust a few other things. But our bleed is hidden right here. We hit the down arrow and you can see I have a bleed section of 0.25 inches. And I just like that because it's a decent size bleed. Some places like Lulu Publishing, Barnes & Noble Press, and Draft to Digital actually prefer a smaller bleed section. But when I do the smaller bleed section, it actually makes it so they don't crop the book correctly. So I enjoy working with KDP and Ingram Spark because they allow you to do this larger bleed section of 0.25 inches, and that makes it so the cropping is almost always perfect. So I'm just going to show you real quick that we can change this to, say, 0.1, and I'm going to hit Preview, and you can see it just got way smaller, and then I'm going to change it to 0.3, and it got way bigger. So again, I prefer 0.25. I have had the least issues with that. And then you just hit OK and it saves it all. So that is the bleed. That's how you adjust your margins and everything else. So now that we are good to go, we can actually move on to the next module where we actually go ahead and we start formatting our book. Okay, welcome to the third module, and in this module we're actually going to go in and start formatting our book. So for most of this module I'm going to be using my book Meet Me at the Summit as the reference. You may also see me mention another book. It's going to be one of the Marketing for Authors books that I formatted to show you a little bit more complex options. So we're not going to be just talking about novels. We are also going to be talking about formatting complex books like nonfiction books that have a lot of subheaders and bullet points, images, things like that. In this lesson in particular, we are going to be talking about your front matter. So that is all of this right here, everything that leads up to the start of your book, which is here.